What kind of needs were you looking for going into the off season?
Well, if you look at our list, that's pretty much what we were looking for. It's some defensive backs. Obviously, quarterback was a priority. Wide receiver. We got a couple of defensive ends, and offensive line-wise, we had a good recruiting class last year. So we felt like if we got one or two this year, that would be solid for us. And that's about it. I mean, in terms of what we were looking for. So. Recruiting is all about priorities, and you have to look at what your needs are and really look into the future too in your depth chart, and there's a lot of strategy, so it's not undifferent than the draft from the standpoint of getting guys up on the board and seeing how the dominoes work out. You have a top group by position, and then once the recruiting process starts and guys start committing to you and so forth, then it's a very dynamic situation.
Before we talk about this new class, last year you had a big signing class. A lot of those guys still around. They all red-shirted. Are you happy with the progress of that class?
Really am. Those guys are actually on a different weight program. We played a couple of the freshmen this year, but most of them red-shirted, and so you want to get those guys in a developmental program as fast as possible and get them in the weight room, and so they were on a 3-day a week program and really made a lot of progress. We got some nice body types in there in terms of frames to build on and so forth, and that's kind of the objective when you look at starting with the young kids. I like getting those kids that have a lot of growth potential and really haven't capped out in high school, and I believe strongly in our strength program, and to watch those guys develop is really exciting.
A lot of those guys probably going to battle for positions this spring and into the fall.
Exactly, and you're not really counting on that class right away. That's what I mean about planning towards the future. In an ideal world, you bring those guys along and don't get them in the mix too early. But if they're good enough to play, they're good enough to play. And so based on what I've seen with these guys, the talent level and so forth, that could easily happen in spring ball, so it'll be exciting to see what happens.
Well, let's talk a little bit about this year's recruiting class. We'll just start at the top of the list. Andrew Baker, wide receiver out of Urbandale, Iowa, big guy, 6'3", 190.
We feel like in our program right now we have some of the smaller, fast guys, and I like getting a variety of wide receivers, and all three of the guys we signed this year are 6'3" and above. Receivers, and so we have the speedy, quick slot guys on the team right now. We felt like we needed to get a couple of big bodies in there, and that's what we did.
Yeah, when I looked at those wide receivers, there are big guys, and you got the speedy, the Ralph Watson type guys.
Right.
A little bit smaller, very, very quick. And now you bring in these 6'3" guys, which for the outside type guys.
And Andrews, he's pretty dang fast too. Actually, he played. Urbandale runs kind of a double slot offense, and he was a slot back, so it wasn't like he was an outside guy. He carried the ball as a running back a fair amount, and starts on their basketball team. He was on a state champion hurdle relay team, and so he's got a lot of overall talent.
Jack Cronin, a defensive end, also out of Urbandale, Iowa. I'm going to assume teammates, 6'3", 225 freshman.
Yeah, Jack is one of those, again, one of those bodies that we're talking about. Plays really hard. A number of these guys actually could play on either side of the ball. Jack's one of those guys. He was an outstanding tight end. We have him listed as a defensive end. He's pretty flexible in terms of what he does, but he's got that 6'3" and maybe growing type body. And what we really liked about Jack was just he plays all out every play.
Lane Fisher, offensive lineman, 6'4", 280 freshman, right here in Warrensburg.
Well, again, look at the size of Lane, and we feel like he's a young guy physically, and his upside is huge, and we're really looking forward to see what he can do in terms of developing and bringing him along. And again, offensive line is a spot where it's probably the hardest position on the team to play as a freshman or play as a young guy, just because there's so much to know. And then there's a physical factor as well. And so with those combinations, we feel like we want to get those kids in. They're young, develop them, bring them along. because if you get too many junior college or transfer guys in there, it takes about a year to bring them along, and so you're better off with a guy like Lane that's got a bunch of upside, and his best football's ahead of him, and we're excited to see what he can do.
Yeah, we talked about that last year a little bit with the offensive and defensive line, bringing in junior college guys. You weren't real excited about that because first it takes a lot of money, so that's a big cap hit for you, or cap hit, scholarship.
Well, it's a pretty good way to say it, really. We got a cap, 36.
And then it's a year to get him ready to go, so you're investing a lot of money for basically a one-year guy, and you bring these freshmen in, redshirt them, get it big and strong, and then you don't maybe not have as much money in them, but you have them for 4 years.
You do, and it's a little easier to get a forecast on those guys too. As you mentioned, when you bring a transfer in, your thought process is that he's going to start. I mean, that's why you're doing it. There's no other reason to bring a 2-year guy in. And so there's obviously some gamble involved there. You do your best in terms of evaluation and so forth. I'm not against transfers at all because obviously we've had some tremendous talent here. If you look at our All-Americans, it's been about 50-50 high school and transfer kids the last couple of years. So you just have to be careful in the process and I think strike a balance with what you're doing recruiting-wise.